Sharon. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's have a little think about the metronome. It seems to be a great divider in musical circles of, is it helpful, is it beneficial, isn't it? There are pros and cons and it isn't applicable in practice every situation. However, I myself can't imagine practicing without one. I have these two metronomes here. It makes me laugh how metronomes have changed over the years. I had a metronome like this when I was a young teenager, and I did hours and hours and hours of practice. It sort of became my best friend for a while, and I remember I was practicing one piece, and so it works with kind of a weight at the bottom, and the pendulum, not sure, kind of moves according to the weight, and that affects the speed. And I was practicing a particular Mozart sonata, and I just could not get the timing right at all. It just wouldn't work at all, and it took far longer than it should have for me to realise that there was like a plastic pendulum weight at the bottom. And over years of practice, I think the plastic must have case hardened, and a lump had fell off inside, and so it was actually ticking unevenly, tick, 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 because this weight had broken at the bottom. So yeah, I probably wasted a few hours there without properly investigating. I bought another one of those, and they were so expensive. They still are. And I bought another one, and that lasted me another few years. But then the children, when they were toddlers, I don't know how they managed to get hold of it, and they actually bent the metronome pendulum. I should know what that's called, like the metal guide inside where you change the tempo. And I tried to get it straightened out and recalibrated, but it just couldn't be mended. So I got this little more portable one. Same principle, but before this only ever used to be the only option really. And then when I was a student trying to make things more accessible, they actually released a CD of metronome clicks, and if you wanted a certain metronome click, a tempo, you choose your BPM, and you'd choose the track of that BPM, and then you'd have to loop the track, but it would only loop so many times. I suppose it was only the same as that would run out of wind, so you'd have to try again. But I thought, oh, wow, CD, how retro is that? Well, now it's so fab, isn't it? You can have apps, you can just have just one on the internet playing live. If you've got Wi-Fi and stuff, you can just get them for free now, can't you? However, I have spent many hours practicing with the metronome, and I still suggest that you do. And so let's just think about the pros and the cons of metronome practice, because there is no doubt that as musicians we are inclined to play the easy bits fast, the tricky bits slow, and so we need to calibrate that and practice out that tendency. And so, and as well, things like, I've just been practicing, it's a Haydn sonata actually, and there's a really busy sort of trill and ornament in the right hand against the semiquaver Alberti bass in the left hand, and it's also fast, and I just couldn't piece it together, so I've had to work it slow, figure out the maths, and then build up the speed, because otherwise I do slow down in that section comparable to the rest of the piece. I can't imagine not practicing with a metronome. However, I do understand that it does, at times, it sort of robs the heart and the soul out of the music to begin with. And you do have to spend hours and hours and hours practicing those pieces, building up the speed slowly. However, my point would be that you would need to spend those hours practicing anyway to build up your proficiency. And so it just kind of regulates and guides that time that you should already be spending anyway. And I know that at the beginning level of practice, it is difficult to consider the musical elements of a piece when you've got a metronome clicking away. For the record though, I always get rid of the ping, that sort of the bell that pings for the first beat of each bar. I can't do with that going, there's too much going on. Just a click will do. But I do think that once you've practiced something under your fingers enough, even though you're still practicing with a metronome, I do still think it's possible to play musically, and you sort of send the metronome click to the back of your mind and just keep it there as a sort of a reference point. But you can, with practice, once you begin to become more proficient with the music, you can then build in the musical elements. It just takes that extra little bit of practice. Some people don't like to use the metronome, and they say that, you know, there are other ways of practicing. So you could practice, say, mid-phrase to mid-phrase, or mid-bar to mid-bar at a certain point later to work out tricky sections. And I do think that's true, but I still don't think it answers the fact of we still then will tend to slow down on those bits. So I guess it's what works for you, really, and not just in the context of musical sort of application in terms of pieces, but for your technical exercises as well. So you've practiced your scales and you rattle up and down them and you think, oh yes, I know my scales, I know those really, really well. But then put them to a metronome click, and my word, doesn't it show you any little weaknesses in those scales. You think you know them really, really well, and then you put it with a metronome and you realise actually that you don't know it quite as well as you think, because you can't quite stay up to speed as you think you can, because the metronome tells no lies. It doesn't wait even a fraction of a second for you. You have got to be bang on the centre of the beat all the time. And then that is perhaps another one of the reasons that people say they don't like playing with the metronome, because it's so mathematical. You know, you are concentrating on playing on the centre of the beat all the time. But my suggestion would be that, you know, music is quite mathematical to begin with, and you have to make sure that your timing is accurate, and you do need to be playing on the dead centre of the beat, and only when that is safe can you then add the musical elements. Because if you get carried away on the musical aspects too soon and you haven't got the maths in place, you haven't got your sort of timing sorted, then the musical elements won't really be appropriate because you're not really playing it accurately. So, you know, it's an open debate, and I'm open to hear people's comments. But for my part, I just think that all of the things that are said against the metronome, I think you can work around. It doesn't answer everything, and you wouldn't practice with a metronome all the time. There comes a point when it's like you've got the timing sorted, you've got it kind of up to tempo. You do then need to put the metronome away and then just concentrate purely on the musical flow. But by that point, you've got the musicality that you can think of, because the maths is already in your fingers, the note proficiency, the security is already there in your fingers, because you've done that hard work of those hours and hours with the metronome. So even the things that I say that I hear are against the cons of playing with a metronome, I find that I can work around, whereas the benefits I can't find a replacement for. You know, and even things like, you know, you've done your scales, you've worked through your pieces, even things like, you know, if you're working through some exercises for a pianist, if you're working through the hand-on exercises, you get the notes under your fingers and then you crash through them with the metronome, and it really builds up your finger strength, it builds up your technical proficiency, and the metronome makes sure that you are bang on the beat and that you can play it absolutely in time, and you can build up the speed so that you're playing at a steady tempo, not fast on the easy bits, slow on the tricky bits. It doesn't answer all of the problems, but I can't find another alternative to practicing with the metronome many times. And, you know, I said it becomes your best friend for a time, because you just spend so many hours and hours, and that may be one of the things that people say goes against the metronome, because you do have to spend such a lot of time practicing. However, again, that would sort of come back on itself, because surely you should be spending that time anyway. So that's my thoughts, and there may be times when you're playing with the metronome and it's all going wrong, and to be honest, if you haven't sort of flung your music book up the wall once or twice in frustration, then, you know, that I don't think you've quite practiced hard enough, really. You know, it's a rite of passage to absolutely lose your temper with the metronome and just sort of close the book and have done with it for a little bit of time. I'm afraid that's par for the course. However, working through that, you then get the benefits of proficiency in whatever piece you're playing. You get proficiency at your instrument and you get consistency in your timing. So I would still say absolutely yes. Spend that time with the metronome. I can't find a replacement for it. It doesn't answer every question in terms of performance, but I think it certainly sets the foundation. I'd love to know your thoughts. Thanks for listening. Bye.